Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. We of course saw President Asif Ali Zardari sworn in today, and we've also seen, of course, the election prior to that as far as the Prime Minister is concerned. Now, as far as the cabinet formation, we'll be talking about the challenges that jointly the PMLN and PPP face as far as moving forward after the cabinet formation is concerned. Of course, there are a lot of names that are being given out, talked about. Regardless, we'll be talking about what kind of the first couple of weeks the government can expect after the cabinet formation. The challenges, of course, in the form of IMF, which the review, which is going to be the first one, and then overall how, of course, with the Ramzan starting day after tomorrow, overall the kind of challenges, getting the provisions to the people overall in this kind of economy, in these kind of challenges, what the government faces after, of course, the governance and government breaking is finished overall, concluded overall. All of that today on Perspective. I have with me Daniyal Sheikh, who's a political analyst. Thank you for being with us today. Abdullah Mohmand, who is a senior journalist. Thank you for joining us today. We also have with us Usman Chohan, who is an economist. Thank you for joining us. And Agha, Iqrar, Haroon, who is also a senior analyst. Thank you for being with us today. Before I go to the guests in the studio, I'll go to Agha Sahab. Agha Sahab, there is, as far as the challenges for this government is concerned, how do you overall look at the situation? In terms of, of course, economically, and also as far as an opposition, we are not looking at an opposition that is, content to sit in the parliament and, talk about laws, talk about procedure, talk about policy, as far as with the government. We are looking at an opposition that is, still protesting. What kind of challenges do you think in this kind of an environment the government faces?
Thank you, Mahrukh. First of all, we see to the economic side. I am sure that government of Pakistan has already parked, you can say, the amount which is we have already promised with the IMF for April to June. But the situation would be a little critical after June because, if I'm not wrong, we have to give almost 20 billion US dollar by July 2024. And, there is already the price of electricity has gone up to, you can say, 71 or 72 rupees per unit if you are utilizing 500 extra, over 500 units per month. So there is no space for recovering hard cash from people like you and me. And the next, you can say, is fuel. And it's also going up. But for how long and for how much? Because we are not expanding our tax base. We are not taxing traders. We are not taxing the middleman. And I think we will continue with this kind of governance. And that would be another problem for Pakistan's economy.
Because the two are, of course, in conflict with each other. I'm going to take Usman Saab's opinion on this also as an economist. Usman Saab, of course, as far as the government is concerned, their priority is providing for the people in this difficult time. But then, of course, there's a limited cachet to, from which they can dole out anything. No matter how sincere, no matter how much, they may want to. In that kind of a scenario, the difficulty is how and what to prioritize, isn't it?
You're absolutely right. There's no better way to put it that even if you have a positive sentiment and a benevolence towards the people, the pie that you can share is limited. It's a smaller pie and constrained at a time when inflation is very high, at a time when global energy prices remain very high. And so it's very difficult for even the most benevolent of leaders to navigate a difficult situation. And we are not unique in this. because there are many other countries that are struggling with the same sorts of general economic malaise, and everybody is trying to do the best for their people, but the constraints are enormous, the deficits are large, inflation is high, and therefore the binding constraints tend to be so large, and so you cannot do too much even if you want.
Fair enough. Let me go to Daniyal here. Daniyal, of course, in that kind of an environment, to prioritize government spending and what sector is going to be difficult. And it's going to be one of those challenges that the PMLN-led government faces.
First of all, they'll have to cut down public spending. That's the first thing. Then they have to focus on downsizing, but while doing that, they have to take PPP on board.
What about subsidizing then during Ramzan and those things which are also going to have to be done?
See, as far as subsidizing during Ramzan is concerned, or subsidies on edible commodities is concerned, that compared to other public spending is a very trivial amount. It's not, it doesn't add up. It's a few million, million rupees, so it's not a sizable amount. But the impact that it has on especially the people living below the poverty line, it's so immense that it has to be done. It's something. It's one place, at least for now, that you cannot cut down on, especially considering the food situation in Pakistan, and already more than half of the population is living below the poverty line, and it's something very important. I don't think they can cut down on that.
Overall, also, this is also something that's being talked about as far as the PPP, PMLN cabinet situation is concerned. Of course, we are looking at the PPP at this time saying that they only want, positions like the Senate chairmanship, of course, presidency. We've seen. I'm going to include Abdullah in this also. But overall, do you think that, of course, with it comes the responsibility that the PMLN faces, the challenges that they are in the forefront of? Do you think they will maybe change their mind, considering perhaps after the budget there are, things that are being said about that? There's no confirmation, but do you think that there's a possibility that sharing the burden may happen later?
Thank you so much, Mahrukh. In coalition government, accommodating political parties and invisible forces is a big challenge, and PMLN is facing the same because it's a coalition government, and you have MQM, you have other political parties. PMLN is not, PPP is not in this position. They are not getting federal cabinet slots, but you have to accommodate the political parties on major ministries as well, some assets of the invisible forces, and that was the reason that Iqrar was sidelined, and another one was, it's not sure and confirmed till yet that he will be the minister or not, but it's saying that Iqrar is accommodated in foreign ministry. So it's a big challenge, the formation of government, and there are news which is not verified that PPP will later included in the cabinet, and they will be part of the cabinet, and Bilawal Bhutto Zardari will be the foreign minister, but that are unverified news. But still, the formation of the cabinet, in which you have to accommodate political parties and other forces, assets.
There's also the MQM, which is
this is MQM. This is Tehreek-e-Istikam and other parties which are which you have to accommodate it as well. Another challenge. Rana Sanawallah lost election, Saad Rafiq lost election, and other PMLN stalwart lost election. You have to accommodate them in the federal cabinet, and there are
also by-elections pending on some seats.
Yeah, there are by-elections, but in the early stage they are they are planning to adjust Rana Sanawallah, Saad Rafiq in the federal cabinet as a special assistant advisor. So their formation of government is still a challenge for PMLN and Shahbaz Sharif, because there is one political party, MQM, and you have to accommodate them in the federal cabinet, and they are demanding some other ministry, but government is planning to award them some less popular ministries. So this is a challenge. Other challenges are economy, the political agitation, which is started by PTI, and now Maulana Fazlur Rahman is also planning after Ramzan that they will come on roads and they will protest against.
That itself is a challenge, because we are looking at protests happening even now, even today. And whether, of course, peaceful protest is a right, but to what end is it supposed to? Let me include Agha Sahib in this. Agha Sahib, is it designed to perhaps increase pressure on the government? Of course, one can see that seems to be the target here. Peaceful protest is again the right of every citizen, and the government and of course the government has said so. But overall, in terms of when we go to the ministry side of things, do you think that, of course, they're talking about a 14-member cabinet at this time. The size is going to be they're going to try to keep the size small and perhaps include, like we're talking here, the PPP later on. But the question is, at this time, for tough decisions to be taken, and a coalition partner like the PPP that is choosing to sit out at this time, isn't that itself going to be the biggest challenge?
I think the cabinet is not a challenge for this government, and the cabinet is not demanding also. The last time the PDM government, the cabinet was ballooned to almost, if you include everybody, that was more than 70, but almost 30% were not taking any salaries or perks and privileges. So whosoever is needed and if he wants to serve the country, so he can be or she can be there without salary and without the perks and privileges. That is not an issue. And maybe the very stalwarts of PMLN would withdraw their perks and privileges if they want to be in cabinet, because the country is going to a very crucial phase. This is the one aspect. And the second aspect, according to my understanding, MQM is demanding 5 ministries. And PML is ready to give only 1 ministry and 1 governorship. So I think this is another issue that is a serious issue. And if you talk about the overall, you can say, political scenario of the country, whatever happened in KPK assembly with a lady legislator, so you can smell, you can understand the mood of the party, which is a very huge number in National Assembly. So this would be a tough, you can say, opposition to PML and so-called multi-party government. These are the very important.
Agha Sahab, do you think perhaps, talks with the PTI-led Sunni Ittihad Council perhaps may alter the situation there, or, it may make a difference in the kind of environment that we are looking at in the assembly at this time? Do you think that can make a difference at all? Or, of course, it also has to do with the former chairman of PTI and the instructions there. But overall, don't you think that there is perhaps a thawing there? We also saw what he said with regard to May 9th. So the environment overall, the political climate, the temperature perhaps can be brought down a little bit.
Not at all. Not at all. Because the casting of PTI was formed in a way that it must be a very aggressive party, very abusive to other people, don't listen anybody, and keep trying whatever they want. So, and this is their structure, and they are very successful in this structure. Otherwise, they could have not been in assemblies. So they would follow their fixed or signature style of behaving. So I don't feel there would be any calm in National Assembly or in Punjab Assembly also.
Fair enough.
Can I add something?
Ji, Daniyal, before I go to Usman.
I agree with what Agha Sahab said. I don't think that cabinet formation is an issue. As far as the other question that you raised, that talking to them would matter or not. So there's a saying, you can take the monkey out of the jungle, but you cannot take the jungle out of the monkey. So a person, members of those party are smoking in the parliament. They're smoking their cigarettes. So the people who lack such decency, I think it's very difficult to talk logic or sense into them. And I don't think that the bigger challenge for the government is going to be talking People's Party into downsizing and nationalization of privatization of the sick units which the state is running. And that's going to be a big challenge, because Bilawal has already said that he's going to take a stand if the government tries to do this. But whereas I think that we don't have a choice, we will have to, like Karachi Steel Mill, Pakistan Steel Mill, even PIA has to be restructured and it has to be downsized. And that's going to be a very big challenge, convincing People's Party to support them in doing this.
Usman Sahab, do you agree? Before I go to Abdullah, you think that, convincing whether maybe as far as the performance is concerned, as far as the PMLN led government at this time, they're going to be concentrating on what they can do as far as economy is concerned. That remains the first priority for government at this time, and then move on from there. And perhaps over time they're also continuously saying that whatever the PTI is agitating against as far as their whatever their grievances are concerned, those can be redressed through the courts. And there is overall opinion that, for example, as far as Peshawar High Court is concerned, their decision as far as the nominated seats are concerned, and those will continue. But in the meantime, the business of the House and business of governance has to continue.
I think you're making a very important fundamental point, that the process of governance still has to continue. This is true. The job of leading a united front that has all of society on board is difficult when the politics becomes acerbic and fractious, as it is now. And when you have an acerbic and fractious climate, then you may have individual rationalities triumph over the collective rationality. What this means is that it may be more rational for you to pursue a more extreme stance, not cooperate with other people within the environment, to pursue a larger portion of a shrinking pie. And by contrast, if the pie were growing, or at least stable, and there was enough to go around, then you would have people perhaps coalesce towards a larger rationality. So individual, group, and then larger group rationalities can often be conflicting. And I think this is the challenge for anybody who assumes the helm of such a large and important country as ours.
Do you think, Abdullah, I think that as far as Usman is concerned, he makes a fair point that perhaps if things do stabilize and they are, then more people will support what's happening as far as governance is concerned. In your opinion, how long can it take, even if things go remarkably well, for things to overall stabilize in terms of economy? Is it a question of years? Is it a question of months?
There is no magic. As Pakistan is facing various challenges on economy front, as well as the peace, the terrorism issues, as well the political instability which is facing by the country, because the Sunni Ittihad Council and PTI have announced that they will not run the parliament to do their business. So it's a big challenge, and without political stability and without a peace, you can bring investments, you can bring prosperity in your own country. So government should first address the challenge of political stability, because Maulana Fazl Rahman is also coming on roads. PTI have the same strategy. If you're thinking about if you are saying about the economy, so there is no magic that you will restore the economic challenge. You will address the economic challenges in months. It's a game of years, because our population is growing with a 2.5% as well. Or edible items, or we are importing a lot of food items. We are facing the climate change. Our agriculture lands are shrinking. If I'm quoted some figure that you need your crops production, annual crops production is 29 million ton, but your need this time is more than 30 million ton. So you need $1.5 billion to import that wheat. So it is a challenge. And for the recovery of economy and bringing stability and relief to the people of Pakistan, it will take a lot of time. And I know that IMF is coming with some new, they have more demands in Pakistan. The people of Pakistan will face some more inflation and other challenges.
And because of that, in terms of the budget, do you think there's going to be more conditionalities with regard to this budget also? Are we going to be looking at increases within this budget also?
Yes, because in March you are going to IMF for the new loan. The old term is expiring and you are getting new loan.
We're looking at the review again.
So you will implement that what IMF is demanding in your budget, and this budget will be, I'm saying that this budget will bring a lot of challenges for the people of Pakistan, including the food items, the petroleum products, and all the other medicines. So there is a challenge, and the government have no other option, but they will impose what IMF have demanded.
Fair enough. Daniyal, do you think when we talk about the PPP and the PMLN as two different political parties, we were just talking, their ideologies are essentially not the same. And they have, a very different kind of makeup in terms of their, as all political parties do. For them to coexist in this manner, of course, we also saw earlier on, the PDM was an amalgam of many political parties. How, challenging is that going to be in itself?
Absolutely. The way you said the difference, if you go back to how when Politics of People's Party started, so Bhutto's came up with his nationalization policy, and the Sharif family was one of the biggest victims of that policy. And by now, I think everyone realizes that it was not a great idea. It's not state's job to run enterprise. So yes, you're, and like even right now, like I said earlier, that PMLN wants or has to at least restructure these state institutions which are not making money, or which are not generating any, or which are liability on the state. So, but at the same time, PPP is, even right now, they're not letting them do this. Similarly, even there are other policies like the Benazir income sport. I personally think that it's nothing more than paying to the galleries, but all that is doing, it's creating inflation, because you're printing money, but there's no real-time value of it. Whereas PMLN has always focused on trade, or even to the extent that they were willing to do trade with our hostile neighbor, because Nawaz Sharif felt that this is the way forward. And if you look at the 16-month tenure of Shahbaz Sharif, doing that, he opened a trade corridor with Iran. And even their focus on CPAC is a continuation of their same policy. And yes, this year is very difficult, like that poem, when the funds are low and credits are high, you want to smile, but you have to sigh. But I'm quite optimistic by the start of next year, hopefully, inshallah, we'll be in a much better position. And the reason for that is going to be the trade avenues that the Sharif government is going to open up for the Pakistani markets.
You think that we're talking about, things like debt sustainability, increasing tax revenue, economic competitiveness, and social reliance. These are important things. And the IMF is also going to be looking at them. I want to include Agha Sahab in the discussion. Agha Sahab, there is, these are not small challenges. We talk about, and of course, we are looking at, as far as a new team being led by someone new as far as economy is concerned. Do you think it's going to mean a change of policy? Again, that has to be limited and within the circumstances that we have at this time.
Mahrukh, unfortunately, we are a country where only in 1 year, our, you can say, loans were increased 14,000 billion. 14,000 billion. 000. So how can you survive with such a country? I mean, such circumstances where your 1 year increase in your loaning is 14,000 billion rupees. Unless you have to go for a revamping of your economy, you have to shun off burden on your shoulder, that is privatization. And I support the Daniyal, because whenever you will go for the massive privatization, definitely Pakistan People's Party would be against this. And one thing is very...
So then ideologies are very different in that regard as far as the two parties are concerned. For them to coexist. But again, we have seen in the past that the PPP and the PMLN have been able to get along in the larger political interest, and of course they've said as far as the country interests, in the interest of Pakistan and democracy also.
Of course they are together. But for example, People's Party, according to my information, People's Party is ready for the privatization of PIA. And this is my information, I may be wrong. But if you talk about the Karachi steel mills, Karachi steel mill is not a steel mill only. It's a very important political, you can say, issue in Karachi or in Sindh also. So, because there are thousands and thousands of people who are working over there, and they belong to the interior Sindh and the urban Sindh both. So, Karachi steel would be, Pakistan steel is what you say, is a very important factor that the parties had to decide. They are together. They would definitely try their level best to bail out Pakistan from these circumstances. But People's Party has other kind of narrative over the economy issue, and PML has the other side of, because People's Party believes that we have to go for, you can say, controlling our leakages, and moreover, we should, you can say, we should shun off at least seven federal ministries, and this may not be appropriate for the PMLN. The People's Party and the PMLN would definitely have a different opinion about how to handle the economy. And I have told you this, the seriousness, the graveness of economy, a country which has a circumstances where every year their loan are increasing 14,000 billion rupees.
But we
So you
also
can well
have at
imagine.
this time we have the CSF as far as leading, directing the government, perhaps in the right direction as far as economy is concerned. Isn't that also true, Usman Saab? Usman Saab, ji.
Yes, I think that it's important to have a common steering of the economy. Sometimes I wonder, because we have so many ministries, why do we need such a large architecture? So if you want to go towards SIFC, then you have a lot of redundancies. What I would like, agreeing with all of the speakers, I think the subtext of what they're saying is that we need a smaller and more efficient government. And that it's not so much about the revenue side, because you can't raise taxes, you can't squeeze people like us sitting here. You really have to look at the expenditure. And therefore, if you have expenditure, you should have a much more efficient, technically oriented government. I mean, that uses technological basis to solve problems in society. And therefore, you are a facilitator. The government should be a facilitator for a vibrant private sector. As far as your ideology point from before, I think it is true that there is an ideological as well as a dynastic element to political parties in South Asia. This means that for the larger goals, the larger ambit of economics, they may come from different assumptions, but ultimately the outcome is to have a more vibrant and thriving and prosperous Pakistan. Therefore, insofar as they can do that within a shrinking pie, within a tough global environment, I think that they should work together to do it. And whether it is SIFC or any other structuring, it has to be on the expenditure side, the serious business of having a facilitative role for the rest of us to rise up as a nation.
What about, I think in this kind of, Daniyal, for us to talk about at this time investment seems a little hasty. I mean, it seems, do you think it's too optimistic at this time? Because the kind of scenario, unfortunately, in the real sense that we are looking at, is really not very investor friendly.
Well, if you're talking about the private investors, yes, it's not. But like I've mentioned earlier, as far as CPAC was concerned, at the pace that it was running during Nawaz Sharif's last tenure, and then it was completely stopped, the progress stopped. So if that starts again, so that automatically will bring a lot of Chinese investment, and not just investment when they have stakes in this region. So it's going to become their focus, and that's definitely going to help the economy. And especially
you think we're looking at more perhaps investment from the Chinese side?
Definitely.
We are perhaps looking at more. There is UAE. There are certain friendly countries that we can perhaps look to. Abdullah, isn't that true?
Yeah, because investment and trade is the only option with these countries, because no one is ready to give you more loans.
Because we saw that happen earlier on during the PDM era also.
Yeah. Because no one is ready, because it's a very old practice, and now all the neighbor countries and friendly countries are not in that mood to give you more and more loans. So you have to change your perspective, you have to change your plannings. So there are Chinese investments, no doubt the CPEC will restore as well. The federal cabinet last week approved the Pakistan-Iran gas pipeline, which will reduce our challenges, energy crisis in Pakistan. And there are other countries as well who want to invest in Pakistan, but who have to restore their faith. You have to address their
and the climate also.
And one thing I'd like to add with Abdullah Saab, Nawaz Sharif is, in the past, he's been very good at convincing other heads of states to get them to invest or get them to work with Pakistan. And although he's not Prime Minister, but he's still in a very important
position. Of course, the head of
PML.
Yes.
Like Agha Sahab would probably endorse that when he went to America in '99 to defuse the Kargil situation, and the way he managed to persuade President Clinton. Now it's part of history, but it was beyond comprehension that a person could do this, but he managed to do this. So even right now, he'll be, especially his friends in the Arab states, and then his relationship with China, on that personal level, he'll definitely be able to get something in Pakistan's favor from them.
Agha Sahab, of course, when we talk about investment, when we talk about funds coming into Pakistan, investment businesses and all that, there is one of the main tenets of that is political stability. the kind of situation that we are looking at as far as the PTI-led political party, Sunni Ittihad Council is concerned, we are seeing the protests happening. Do you think it can, it's just part of the course, it's going to continue and perhaps settle in its own time, or do you think that it can lead to, any kind of, God forbid, instability?
Mahrukh, if you remember that whatever you call it, Sunni Ittihad or PTI, it wrote a letter to IMF to block Pakistan's tranche, but very fortunately they were failed, and you have read the response of IMF. So a party has such kind of mindset definitely knows that political instability would not encourage investors, particularly foreign investors, to invest in Pakistan. So definitely they will try their level best to, to continue this unstable kind of a thing, and political stability would never be in their favor. And more of one thing is very important. Even this week we were talking about the SIFC. It's very great initiative, but I believe that major investment would come in a hard cash kind of a thing. Like, for example, we have given two berths at Karachi port to a friendly country for 30 years lease, and the amount is very, very, very small. I don't want to even mention over here. So, countries would come to get hold of the important assets. For PIA, you can find, for steel mills, you even can find, for railway, you can find. But these are, 5 or 6 hard cash items you have. Because the major problem is not only the political instability, another problem is the capacity of the country. Our youth is unskilled. We have a bulge of youth, and they are, I don't want to use the word illiterate, but they are far lower than demanded by foreigners to invest in industrialization. So they are unskilled, mostly they are unskilled. This country, which is at 250 million people, do you know how many vocational institutions you have? Only just 4,200. Only 4,200 vocational institution for a population of 250 million people. And in this 4,000 plus, you have only 269 vocational institution for women. So, you don't have offered, only you have land to offer. And if you talk about agriculture, this is a very important sector. But again, the Pakistan is right now, everybody can see, is a victim of climate change and global warming. So other countries are a little shy to invest hugely in your agriculture because of climate change. Because every second year there is a heavy floods and floods in a very unusual places. So these are all factors. I think there are people in Pakistan who can understand what I am saying. So things are not as easy as we just talk. There must be a complete comprehensive plan, as mentioned by another friend. We have to cut down our,
do you see, of course, we have to cut down public spending, all of that, are those factors which already have been highlighted. But the question is, can we achieve those kind of targets that we've set out? Usman, do you see, as far as the dollar is concerned, for example, for a while we've seen it fairly stable. Do you think that stability will continue in your opinion, or do you think it can perhaps, rupee can further strengthen also? What do you see overall in the next couple of months?
It's a fascinating question if you pick only the dollar as the question, because what we're looking at is a rupee, like any other currency, in the foreign exchange market. It's a commodity in a market, so it has a supply and a demand, just like any other commodity does. So what drives the demand of the rupee? It would be our exports. It would be other reasons why investment would come. And then there's the supply of the rupee, which is generated through the banking system, particularly lending to the government. So the supply is very, very high, because because the government is the single borrower now of the banking system, and the relationship between them is very, very close. And at the same time, the demand has been flat. It's not that bad, but it is quite flat. So therefore, you're seeing a rise in the price of the rupee, which means a devaluation of the rupee. And so what we have to look at is ways to generate demand for the rupee, yes, and that includes remittances and exports, but at the same time we have to look carefully at the supply of the rupee, because right now, in the circumstances that have been described by my colleagues very vividly, at the same time you see some sectors are doing very well, uncannily well, and one is the banking sector. It is making profit after profit, quarter after quarter. And this is remarkably unsettling that you would have that, because they're in the business of not lending to you and me. They're in the business of lending to the government at a risk-free rate. And that is, I think, a very big problem. So when you look at that fundamentally, I think that there is always going to be downward pressure on the rupee. Historically, it has gone down by about 7% per year, but it happens in shocks. Like, for example, from 100 to 150 and so on. So what you need is for these shocks to not take place, because it's very difficult for all of us to deal with that. That's why the IMF says, please avoid the managed rate system. Now, we are in a very tight band between 270 and 290, let's say, and the IMF is going to come and talk to us about it soon, but I'm not quite sure why they've rested their hand, but they're going easy on us. But they will come knocking on the door, raising this point about why is this so uncannily stable.
Okay, fair enough. Daniyal, I think rather than question why it's so uncannily stable, maybe we're hoping that that stability will continue. As far as, you know, the dynamics overall of government making is concerned, again, do you see the PMLN, you know, perhaps asking the PPP again after all of this business, the dust settles, so to speak, and we see the first part of the formulation of the cabinet happen, for them to perhaps, for this to become a more inclusive government? Because again, you know, Abdullah also mentioned, you know, there are talks of Bilawal Bhutto and, you know, maybe other members of the PPP also being included later, at a later stage, because that will certainly make it easier for the PMLN.
Well, that's not how I look at it. I see it as a goodwill gesture.
By the PPP?
By PMLN to offer them, and by PPP saying that we want to give you free hand.
To accept them or not to accept them?
Well, it's either way. The reason why they, in the first, to begin with, the reason why they declined joining the federal government was that they wanted to give Shabashi free hand in implementing his policies, which I think is it's larger than, I don't see any such precedent in Pakistan's political history.
But one does have to acknowledge that it does, you know, we saw what happened prior to the election. Of course, a lot of it is also politicking, but in terms of how much, you know, onus of it also then rests with whoever is leading, right?
Well, see, you cannot, for example, like if PTI cannot question the system once they've taken the KPK government. Similarly, People's
Yet
Party,
they're still continuing to do so.
Well, it's morally wrong. They should quit the government, and then they should mobilize. Like the chief minister is running, is holding a protest in his own province. So the protest is basically against his own government, because he is responsible of law and order in that province. So similarly, in this scenario, People's Party,
that's a very interesting.
They do share burden, because they are running a government, and everyone knows that the federal government is standing because of their support. So this is not the case, and what they have said earlier, I think that was it was a principled stand.
But optics do matter in politics, don't they, Abdullah?
The decision, People's Party, I was there when they were deciding, we were covering that PPP meeting. So this is a totally a political decision, and there is no card on the table with PPP that they will be part of the cabinet for 1 year. After that, there are possibilities, but there is no option with People's Party. They are not thinking about the cabinet, and that's the reason that they demanded administrative position. This decision is political, and PPP believes that the PTI was a dying project in 2022. But due to the PDM decision with some state stakeholders, they will not only re-emerge PTI and their founder, but as well the PDM have damaged their politics, and in that sense they got some problems in the after the election, and they didn't get the specific numbers they were expecting.
And
So
also,
that is the decision that they are waiting for the budget, that how much the PMLN is burdenizing the people of Pakistan, and they know that what will happen.
of which the
So-
PMLN has little choice. I mean, they
Yeah.
have to do what they have to do at this time.
On the political
As far as Shehbaz Sharif Sahib is concerned, as the Prime Minister of Pakistan, of course, and of the leader of PMLN, he will be looking to, of course, give out the burden as little as possible to the people, because of course politically it has
actually no politician wants to put burden on
wants
the
to
public.
put a burden on the people at this
Yeah.
time. But the question is again, it is going to be out of the pool that is available.
Yeah, there is no
at this
option to
time.
the
There is no
government,
option.
because you have a lot of challenges. Your population is now 250 millions, and you need a lot of you need imports, a lot of food items, a lot of other things, and you have unskilled population in Pakistan. You have millions of young people who are unskilled, and we are producing laborers for the Middle East and other countries. So definitely they will not change. We have to change. As Prime Minister announced that they will train the young people in Pakistan for something. But this time Nawaz Sharif Sahib is running the government. He is not Prime Minister, but Shehbaz Sharif Sahib, the Prime Minister, is following his dictations. But he will suggest, he is not in the cabinet, but he is
But of
running
course
the
he
government.
is. But as far as the PMLN is concerned, as far as the PPP is concerned, the PMLN of course wants, of course we've seen Mariam Nawaz as CM Punjab, she's extremely active even in the first 2 weeks of her CM-ship, and that kind of course Punjab as a center for PMLN is extremely important. And for the PPP, they want to make inroads, and I think Bilawal Bhutto Zardari has been targeting Punjab potentially even through this election. So I think for both those parties, trying to retain and restore their own political base is also extremely important. So they're going to be working.
What you
for
said as far as making inroads is concerned, for them or for any party, whether PMLN or PPP, to make inroads in Punjab, they have to deliver in the federal government. And the argument they gave, I think it makes a lot of sense to me. Okay, the Prime Minister and the federal cabinet should be from the same party, so he can implement his policies and bring the country out of this. And like what Agha Sahib said earlier regarding the unskilled labor, that definitely is one of Pakistan's major problems at the moment. We have a huge population, but they're not
and
skilled.
the youth.
One last thing I would like to add, as a political analyst, I think that Maulana Fazlur Rahman not being in government could be a bigger problem than PPP not being part of the federal government, and I think
and I think that the PMLN has said that they are going to be. I mean, some of the leaders of PMLN, have categorically said that they're going to be trying to get Maulana Sahib over.
Yes, and I don't think it will be difficult convincing him, because he's probably one of the most sensible politicians in Pakistan,
and quite amenable
exactly.
on occasion. Yes.
And although even his protests, they're going to be very civilized. They're not going to be the way PTI
because
is
even
protesting.
at this time we are looking at PTI, trying to retain the kind of momentum, by these protests. They're trying to somehow.
But his influence in Balochistan and his influence in KPK is very important for the federal government, and I think it will be a very good thing for Pakistan if he joins the federal government.
Usman Chohan is very close to Asif Zardari, the president of Pakistan. He conveyed various messages to support him in the presidential election, but he refused. And one thing is that the chief minister Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, because he went to the province, and there will be re-election on the National Assembly seat. So Maulana Sayyid Nasir Mahmood lost his election in 2024. So there is a strategy with PTI that if they support their candidate, Maulana Fazlur Rahman is very upset about losing up his son's seat.
So that
there is a possibility
politics
that
on that side is continuing.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have. Thank you so much for being with us. Daniyal Sheikh, thank you for joining us. Abdullah Mohmand, thank you for being with us. Agha, Iqrar, Haroon, thank you for joining us. Usman Chohan, thank you for being with us today. Overall, of course, we will have the federal cabinet soon. The business of government making will be concluded, the first stage of it certainly, and then of course on to governance and trying to field and deal with the challenges, of course, at this time. In the next couple of weeks, couple of months, we hope things will stabilize further and perhaps move towards better economic situation as far as Pakistan is concerned. Thank you so much for joining us today on Investment.